It was a bright April morning in 1912, at the bustling docks of Southampton, England. The air smelled of saltwater and coal smoke, as thousands of people gathered to witness the departure of a ship unlike any other. Children sat on their fathers' shoulders, vendors sold newspapers shouting, "The Unsinkable Titanic sails today," and families clutched their tickets with trembling hands. And then, she appeared. The Titanic, rising out of the fog like a floating palace, her 4 giant smokestacks towering proudly. Painted black and white, with a golden stripe gleaming in the sun, she was a symbol of human achievement. People gasped, pointed, and whispered, "She's bigger than a city." On the first-class gangway, wealthy passengers in fur coats and diamond necklaces walked proudly. Among them was Rose Titanic, only 17, her red hair shining in the sunlight. She carried herself gracefully, but her eyes told another story, sad, restless, trapped. Beside her walked her fiancé, Cal Hockley, a man of wealth and arrogance, who held Rose's hand like property. Rose's mother, Ruth, followed closely, whispering reminders, "Remember, Rose, this marriage will secure our family's future." Rose smiled faintly, but her heart was heavy. On the other side of the dock, near the third-class entrance, a very different scene unfolded. Poor families lined up with trunks, babies in arms, and hope in their eyes. Among the crowd, Jack Dawson, a young artist with messy blonde hair, clutched his ticket, a ticket he had won in a last-minute poker game the night before. He laughed with his best friend Fabrizio, shouting, "Can you believe it? We're going to America, Fabrizio. The land of dreams." The whistle of the Titanic roared across the harbor, deep and powerful. Passengers cheered. Friends and family waved tearful goodbyes from the dock. Slowly, the mighty ship began to move, tugboats guiding her into open waters. People onshore shouted, "Good luck. God bless you." Rose stood at the railing of the first-class deck, staring at the horizon. Her fiancé spoke of business and fortunes, but she barely listened. Down below, Jack leaned over the rail of the third-class deck, sketchbook in hand, drawing the endless sea. For a brief moment, his eyes drifted upward, and across the distance, he saw her. Their worlds apart, yet destiny had just begun weaving their threads together. The Titanic moved forward, her bow cutting through the waves like a queen marching proudly. Passengers filled with joy, laughter, and dreams had no idea that this journey, meant to be the beginning of their new lives, would soon become the most unforgettable tragedy in history. The Titanic glided across the endless Atlantic like a floating palace. Days passed with calm seas, the sky painted with silver clouds by day and jeweled stars by night. Life on board sparkled with excitement. In the grand dining halls, chandeliers glittered, waiters served fine wines, and the wealthy dined on roasted duck and caviar. In the lower decks, third-class families shared laughter, simple meals, and folk songs, filling the air with warmth and joy. For Rose, the days felt suffocating. She sat at long, formal dinners beside her fiancé Cal, listening to talk of money, stocks, and power. Cal, with his polished smile, tightened his grip on her hand whenever she looked away. Rose's mother Ruth whispered reminders, "Don't forget, Rose, our future depends on this engagement." But inside, Rose's heart rebelled. She longed for freedom, for air, for life beyond golden cages. One evening, Rose wandered to the very edge of the ship's stern. The wind whipped through her hair as she stared into the black waves below. The sea looked endless, terrifying, yet strangely inviting. Tears stung her eyes. Slowly, she stepped onto the railing. Her white gown fluttered dangerously. "Don't do it," a voice called out behind her. It was Jack Dawson. He had been sketching nearby, and when he saw her, his heart froze. "Stay back," Rose cried, her voice shaking. Jack raised his hands gently. "I'm not going anywhere. But if you let go, you're gonna hit the water like 1,000 knives. You won't last more than a minute. Trust me, I've been in cold water." Rose's grip trembled. Her tears fell into the sea. "You don't understand," she whispered. Jack took a cautious step closer. "Maybe I don't. But if you jump, you'll take all the answers with you. And I don't think you're ready to go yet." For a long moment, the only sound was the roar of the ocean. Finally, Rose gasped, her hands loosening, and Jack reached out, grabbing her waist, pulling her back onto the deck. They tumbled together, both panting, both alive. Just then, crew members and Cal arrived, furious. Cal accused Jack of attacking Rose, but Rose, still shaken, defended him. "He saved my life," she said firmly. Jack met her eyes, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. From that night onward, their worlds began to intertwine. Jack showed Rose the ship's hidden corners, the lively music of the third-class decks, the joy of dancing barefoot with strangers. Rose, in turn, shared her dreams, her fears, her longing to escape the chains of wealth. One evening, under a blanket of stars, Rose whispered, "I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a crowded room, screaming, and no one even looks up." Jack looked at her, his voice soft but certain, "Well, I see you." And in that moment, the girl from the golden cage and the boy with nothing but dreams realized they had found something rare and true. A love that ignored class, wealth, and the ticking clock of fate. The Titanic had been at sea for 4 days. The journey felt endless, yet peaceful. Passengers walked the decks wrapped in heavy coats, their breath visible in the icy air. The ship cut through the cold Atlantic waters like a mighty blade, her lights glowing against the night. On April 14, the temperature dropped suddenly. The air became sharper, the sea strangely calm, like a sheet of black glass. Experienced sailors knew, such silence often meant icebergs were near. Throughout the day, warning messages arrived from other ships, ice reported ahead. But in the grand dining hall, the warnings were set aside. The captain and officers believed Titanic was strong enough to withstand anything. That evening, the ship was alive with activity. In first class, laughter and music echoed from the ballroom, violins dancing with the rhythm of champagne glasses. Cal entertained wealthy guests, while Rose slipped away to the deck with Jack. Wrapped in his coat, she felt freer than ever, the stars shimmering above like diamonds. "Isn't it beautiful?" Jack whispered, pointing upward. "You don't get this kind of sky back in the city." Rose smiled. "It feels like the whole universe is watching us." Up in the crow's nest, 2 lookouts scanned the horizon. But the night was moonless, the sea too still. Icebergs, usually visible by the waves breaking against them, now blended into the darkness. Then, at 11:40 p.m., a faint shape appeared. "Iceberg, right ahead," the lookout shouted, ringing the bell furiously. On the bridge, First Officer Murdoch reacted instantly. Hard a starboard, full astern. The great wheel spun, engines roared in reverse, and the Titanic slowly began to turn. Passengers barely noticed, still dancing and laughing. For a heartbeat, it seemed the ship might clear the iceberg. But fate had already chosen. The starboard side of the Titanic scraped violently against the iceberg. A deep, metallic scream echoed. Through the hull as chunks of ice crashed onto the decks. Below, steel plates buckled open, and freezing water poured in with unstoppable force. In the boiler rooms, firemen shouted in panic as water gushed around them. One screamed, "She's flooding fast." On the upper decks, most passengers felt only a shudder, as though the ship had hit a small bump. Laughter continued. One wealthy man chuckled, "What was that?" "Probably nothing." But down below, the truth was already clear. The Titanic was wounded. Within minutes, Captain Smith arrived at the bridge. His face turned pale as the carpenter explained, "5 compartments are flooding, sir. She can float with 4, but not 5. The captain's voice trembled. "Then, she's going down." Unaware of the looming disaster, Jack and Rose leaned over the railing, still lost in each other. But behind them, crew members rushed past, faces tight with fear. The air had changed. Something was terribly wrong. And so, in the dead of night, the ship once called Unsinkable had begun her slow, tragic descent. At first, many refused to believe it. In the first-class lounges, men in tuxedos lit cigars, laughing nervously. "Impossible. This ship can't sink," they said. Women clutched their jewelry, unwilling to leave their warm cabins. But below decks, panic had already begun. Water rushed through corridors, flooding third-class compartments. Families carried screaming children up narrow stairways, only to find locked gates. They pounded the doors, shouting for help. Fear turned to fury as they realized their lives were being measured against money and class. On the boat deck, crew members uncovered the lifeboats. Officer Murdoch shouted, "Women and children first." But there was confusion, no one had drilled for this. The lifeboats, enough for only half the passengers, dangled uselessly as people argued whether to board. The band, led by Wallace Hartley, gathered near the grand staircase. Instead of running, They began to play soft, calming music. Notes of a waltz floated across the freezing air, a haunting comfort in the face of despair. Jack grabbed Rose's hand. "We need to get to the boats." Cal stormed toward them, his voice sharp with rage. "Rose, you're coming with me. Now." Rose pulled away. "No. I'm not leaving without Jack." Cal's face twisted with fury. In the chaos, he tried to drag her toward a lifeboat, but Rose fought back. "Jack,